Hey, I'm Yo from Hand to Mind. This is the first day of the 9th week of the third grade Teach at Home series for math. And today we're going to work on something that's going to help me out because I'm trying to set my alarm so that I know what time to wake up. And I like to go to bed at 10 every night. Let's be real, it's 9:30, but nobody's counting. I like to go to bed at 10. And the doctor recommends I get 8 hours of sleep a night, so just to be a little extra sure, I like to get 8 hours and 35 minutes of sleep a night. So if I go to bed at 10, set my alarm so that I get 8 hours and 35 minutes of sleep, what time do I have to set my alarm for? Well, today, we're going to work on some strategies for figuring that out so that by the end of today, maybe you can help me set my alarm. So let's get started so that I can get this taken care of because I want to make sure I get it set right. You ready to go? Let's go. Last week, we finished the week by learning how to tell time on a clock. Well, today, we're going to extend on that, and we're going to learn how to find times after a particular time. So just to review, here are the parts of a clock. So you have the hour hand, which points to the hour. It's generally the shorter hand of the two hands. And then you have the minute hand. And the minute hand points to the minute, and it's generally the longer of the two hands. When the minute hand points to the numbers, it could either point to the inner numbers or the outer numbers, but most clocks don't have these numbers on the outside. That tells you what minute it is. So if it's pointing to the outer numbers, then that makes it a little easier because you can actually see that here it is 5-minute mark, here's the 10-minute mark, and then these dots stand for all the minutes in between. So you just need to count 5 here. So this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But if you don't see these outer numbers and you only see these inner numbers, then you need to multiply the number by 5. So for instance, if it points to the 1, you multiply that by 5. That means it's the 5-minute mark. If it points to the 9, you multiply it by 5 to get to the 45-minute mark. Now, one thing that can be confusing is up here it says 60. It says 60 because there are 60 minutes in an hour. However, when a minute hand is pointing up directly to the top, that is actually the 0 minute. That means it's the start of a new hour. So this can also be thought of as 0. If you were to tell me what time it is, it would be 3 o'clock, so it would be 3 hours into the day, and then 0 minutes, okay? So don't be confused by that. And then the hour hand points to what hour it is. That's a little easier to read because all of these numbers represent the hour. So if it points to the 3, that means it's pointing to the 3 o'clock hour. If it's pointing in between 3 and 4, that means it hasn't yet hit 4, but it's past 3, so it's sometime between 3 and 4. So the hour number is still going to say 3 if you were to read out the time to somebody. And we'll have plenty of time to practice. And as I said before, some clocks have these extra numbers to tell you where the minutes are. So when the minute hand points to that one, it makes it a little easier for you to understand what it is. So now when you read out a time, and this is all review from last week, the first number you see is an hour. It's the hour sign. And here, just by looking at this hour 4, we know that it's after 4. It could be 4 or after 4, but it cannot be yet 5 o'clock because once it hits 5, this will change to a 5. We also see the minute. The minute is always represented in 2 digits. So even at 4 o'clock, when these are just zeros, you're still going to see 2 zeros. Or 4:05, you're still going to see a 0 here and then a 5 here. So there's always going to be 2 digits in the minute. The hour can be 1 or 2 digits depending on what hour it is. And then the colon is just what separates the hours and the minute. So whatever's in front of the colon is the hours, whatever's behind is the minute. And then lastly, PM versus AM. It tells us what time of day it is. So there's always going to be AM or PM. And AM starts exactly at midnight and ends the second before noon. PM starts exactly at noon and ends the second before midnight. And so most clocks won't tell you AM or PM unless they're a digital clock. Most digital clocks do tell you AM or PM. So let's practice just telling what time it is. So we see what the hour hand is. The hour hand is in between 3 and 4. So we know that the hour hand is going to be 3 o'clock. We see the minute hand. The minute hand is pointing to the 6. So even if these numbers weren't here, we can multiply that by 5. And we could get 6 times 5 is 30, but we see this, so that helps us out, right? So the minute hand is pointing to 30, so we know it's 30 minutes after 3 o'clock. So the time is 3:30. So is it AM or PM? Now, always to know AM or PM, you actually have to just know what time of day it is. So 3:30 AM is going to look something like that. It's in the very middle of the night. It's only 3.5 hours after midnight. It's going to be really dark. 3:30 p.m. on the other hand is going to be right there in the afternoon, 3.5 hours after noon. So it's going to look more like that. All right, so now let's start adding increments of time. So the time here is 3:30. In 10 minutes, what time will it be? So one strategy you can do that is you could just add a minute at a time. So we are going to be adding 1 minute at a time. And this is going to be the first method. So we'll do 3:31, 3:32, 3:33, 3:34, 3:35, so that's 5 so far, 3:36, 3:37, 3:38, 3:39, and then 3:40. So we land on the 40, so we know it's 3:40. That is method 1. That takes a while though, and it's not efficient. As somebody who reads a clock often, it would be great if you could think of other strategies to be able to come up with that quicker. So let's add 10 minutes in 5 or 10 minute increments. Let's do it 5 or 10 minutes at a time. First, let's do it 5 minutes at a time. So we're going to add 5 minutes there, and we know what 5 minutes looks like by practicing, right? And actually, tomorrow we're going to go over intervals, adding intervals, so you'll get a better understanding of what it looks like to add 5 minutes at a time. But you had 5 minutes at a time here, so now you're at 3:35. You add another 5 minutes, now you're at 3:40. Or, conversely, you could just add the whole 10. And then that'll also get you to 3:40. Wonderful. So, the last method is using the number line. The number line. So, my favorite thing is the number line. And you can make all kinds of number lines. Right here we have a number line where the values are already written out. Tomorrow we're going to work, or actually later today, we're going to work on something called the open number line where it has no values written out, and that gives you a lot more freedom to just write your own values. But this one has the values written out, and the time is 3:30. In 10 minutes, what time will it be? Well, let's find our starting point, and then let's add 10 minutes to that, just using this number line. It's going to land here at the 40, so 3:40. Same answer every time. All right, the time now is 4:10. In 6 minutes, what time will it be? Well, since we're only adding 6 minutes, I don't see it's such a bad idea to just add one at a time, right? So we'll do 4:11, 4:12, 4:13, 4:14, 4:15. We've added 5 minutes so far, so we have one more to go, 4:16. There we go. We land on the 16 mark. And remember, with minutes, you know what minute it is because you can just add 1 to the 15. It doesn't say 16, but you know each one of these goes up an increment of 1 minute. So it is 4:16. The time is 4:10, and in 30 minutes, what time will it be? Well, 30 minutes you might not want to add by 1, because that's going to take you a while. So why don't we just go ahead and add by 10? So we'll add our first 10 to get to 4:20, add our next 10 to get to 4:30, and then lastly we'll add our third 10, which is 30 minutes in total, and that gets us to 4:40. So in half an hour, it's going to be 4:40. What about if we add 43 minutes? What time will it be then? Well, I love the number line, especially for adding large amounts of time. Number line is always a good way to go. So we start at 4:10. I'm going to go ahead and start by adding 10 minutes. And that's going to get me to 4:20. I'm going to add 10 more minutes. That's going to get me to 4:30. I've added 20 minutes so far. I'm going to add another 10 minutes. That's going to get me to 4:40, and I've added half an hour so far. 10 more minutes, that brings me to 40 minutes added, and that gets me to 4:50. And now all I have to do is add 3 more because I've already added 40. So here's my last 3, and that gets me to 4:53. There it is. 4:53 is our time. Wonderful. All right, so let's do a problem. Maria started practicing the piano at 5:15. When she was done, it was 5:55. How long did Maria practice the piano? What strategy do I want to use for this one? Let's use the number line. It seems like a pretty large number. So I'm going to put my starting point at 5:15. I'm going to put my ending point at 5:55. So pretty much what I need to do is figure out how far do I have to jump to get all the way from 515 to 555. Well, you can add any number you want. I'm going to go ahead and start with 5. And the reason why is I like to land on a nice multiple of 10. That just makes life easier. I love landing on the biggest multiple I can find. So whether it's multiples of 10s, or if I'm doing even bigger calculations, multiples of 100 or even 1,000, right? I like to land on those nice even multiples. So let's go 5 and we'll land on 20, which is a multiple of 10. And then why don't we do a big jump of 30, okay? So now that lands me at 550, and so far I've jumped 35 minutes, 30 plus 5. And from here, all I have to do is another jump of 5. 5 plus 30 plus 5 equals 40 minutes. So it took Maria 40 minutes to practice. She practiced 40 minutes. Awesome. All right, Neil drove to his mother's house. He left his house at 6:25 and arrived at his mother's house at 7:10. How long was he driving? Let's do the number line. I love the number line. Okay, so let's do our starting point at 6:25, and then we got there at 7:10. How long did it take us? We'll do the same strategy. We'll just go ahead and jump 5 because I like to land on that nice even number. I also like to land on the top of the hour. That's a fun place to land. So I'm going to figure out what it takes to get from 30 or 6:30 to 7, and I know that half an hour after 6 to get to 7 is another half an hour or 30 minutes. So there we go. I've done these 2 jumps so far. I'm at 7, and now all I have to do is get to 7:10. That's only 10 more minutes. So the total amount it took Neil to drive is 5 minutes plus 30 minutes plus 10 minutes, which equals 45 minutes in total. There we go. All right. So now let's add and let's work on adding just an hour. So we've done so far work on moving our minute hand forward, right? But now let's think about what happens when you have to add hours. So when you have to add an hour, what do we notice about what's happening with our hour hand? Well, we see that the minute hand remains the same. So I know I asked about the hour hand, but let's focus on the minute hand for a second. Does the minute hand move when you go up in by exactly an hour? No, the minute hand stays exactly where it is. Although in the time that elapses over that hour, the minute hand is going to do one full rotation. But if you were to just look at the minute hand at one point and then exactly 1 hour later look at it again, it wouldn't look like it went anywhere. Although in reality it did go all the way around, right? But it would look the same. The hour hand, on the other hand, now the hour hand increases by a full unit. Do we see that? So whereas pointing just before the 4 here, now an hour later it's pointing just before the 5. So the hour hand is what changes now. So let's do a problem where we're going to change the hour hand and then we can change the minute hand. So a train ride from Santa Cruz to Sacramento takes 2 hours and 25 minutes. What time will you arrive in Sacramento if you leave Santa Cruz at 4:25? Okay, so it takes 2 hours and 25 minutes. You leave at 4:25. So first things first, let's determine how far the hour hand is going to move, okay? That's the first thing I'm going to want to do. So if it's moving 2 hours, then I'm going to move it up 1 hour from where it is. So it's about 2 ticks after the 4 for the hour, and then I'm going to move it up 2 ticks after the 5. And since we're doing 2 hours, I'm going to do another hour move. So now it's going to be 2 ticks after the 6. It's going to land right about there. So that's what it's going to look like. And what I did now is I just added an open number line for us to work with. So while we're doing this problem, we can do the open number line. And as you see here, we started at 4:25. We went ahead and added 2 hours, which then brought us to 6:25. And we're going to use the open number line for the rest of this problem just to help us see what we're doing. So now that we got the hour down, now we can move the minute hand. So we're going to add 20 minutes to the minute hand first and then 5 because I like to break it up, right? I know what 20 minutes looks like and I know what 5 minutes looks like. 25 minutes, I don't know exactly, or I don't know what that looks like as well. So first things first, let's add 20 minutes to this, right? So you could do it in increments of 10, or if you've practiced enough, you know that 20 minutes is going to be 4 different segments, right? Or 2 different increments of 10. And once again, tomorrow we're going to talk about intervals. So make sure to stay with us for that so you can get a better understanding of how I'm doing this. So I've added the 20 minutes, and on the open number line, I can also do that at the same time. So I'm at 6:25, I added the 20 minutes, and that brings me to 6:45. Last thing I have to do is add the 5 minutes at the end, so I'm going to do that here. I'm also going to do it on my open number line right there, and it lands me at 6:50. So there we go. If it takes 2 hours and 25 minutes to get from Santa Cruz to Sacramento, and you leave at 4:25, you will get there at 6:50. Wonderful. So that was our lesson for today. Tomorrow, once again, we're going to be talking about adding intervals. So please come back tomorrow. And for more resources, please visit hand2mind at home.com. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one.